Hello, welcome to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. I'm David Wheatley, and we're here to talk all things leadership. Well, hello, and my guest this week is Lance Satterthwaite. Lance is one of my colleagues at Humanergy, and we're going to be talking about how to make virtual team building really work today. So welcome, Lance.
Hi, David. How you doing?
I'm doing well, and I love the flag you're flying behind you.
Represent.
For those that are listening, there's a really nice Humanergy logo tacked behind Lance. So welcome, Lance, and just I normally start off with a new guest to say, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Give me the 1 minute kind of potted history of Lance Satterthwaite.
Sure. Well, you said that last name very well. So I'm actually, I often tell people I'm a recovering social worker. So I spent about 15 years working with youth and families. And throughout that whole experience, a part of that passion was bringing groups of people together. So really doing a lot of team building as a part of it, whether it was groups of youth or groups of families. So about 13 years ago, I had the opportunity to join a wonderful organization called Humanergy. And so I've been doing a lot of leadership and team development stuff. And a part of that still has always been doing some, specifically doing some team building. We always call it FLAP, fun with a purpose. But it's always been a part of the passion is how do you connect people and how do you build those relationships?
And we both come from the same roots in some ways, that very experiential based team building activities. And now been back in the business world, we've been doing it in classrooms and conference rooms. And now we're challenged to go one step further and say, how do we continue that real deep sense of experiential engagement using a platform like Zoom? And by the way, I've been to the village of Satterthwaite. That's why I know how to say it.
Awesome.
So if I start off, why is it important, do you think, that we as teams and as work colleagues are connected?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think my mind first goes to really like what's the business case behind the value of connection, and at least a couple of thoughts immediately come to my mind. One is it actually comes from Stephen Covey Jr.'s book, The Speed of Trust, and he has an equation in there, and he talks about with increased trust comes increased speed and reduction in cost, or the vice versa. And I actually think so the more people are connected and the more you're building trusting working relationships, there's some intangible piece there that becomes very tangible in terms of a bottom line business result. I also think if you think about teams that work well together, right? When they're connected, they tend to feel safer, more readily, share ideas and insights. And I actually think, so just if you think about the level of collaboration or the level of problem solving that happens when people more freely express themselves, there's a lot of value in solving real world problems. The other thing I'd say is go to the opposite end of that, which is what happens when people on a team either feel isolated or less connected and less supported. Eventually that shows up in terms of their motivation and their productivity. So I think there's a real business case to it. The last thing I'm going to say on it is, so my background is psychology. I think a lot of us have, that sort of psychology background, but there's so many psychologists that talk about basic human needs. And one of those basic human needs, psychological needs, is belonging. And so the more we can actually help people feel connected and belong to a part of a group, the better they are both internally, psychologically, but I also would say then just being able to work well as a team.
So there's a real business case for maintaining the community. And as we've gone through COVID and people have been pushed out immediately to working from home, one of the things I know I've heard a lot of is how do we maintain that connection when we are all remote and we can't just walk by the office next door and we're not hanging out around the snacks or the water cooler, and that all those natural connections that happen, the organic connections, are missing. and that's having a detrimental effect on both the individuals and the results that we're getting.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. So even if you take what's happened in COVID, and if people have gone virtual, some of what's happened on the team, it may change some of their goals and their roles and whatnot. But the biggest difference for sure has been all of that. We used to call it back in the day, being in each other's quote life space, right? Just being able to see each other, make eye contact, the quick smiles, shooting the bull, so to speak. That's the stuff that sometimes is missing. And that, again, that intangible stuff is actually what is very tangible.
Yeah, I've noticed for the first few weeks of being on Zoom, a lot of people were using the background function and putting up a picture of some beach somewhere. And I've noticed that's dying off a little bit as people have got used to whatever their background is. They're making sure that the people are real about what's behind them and what people are seeing and changing things up. And as I'm saying that, I'm looking at my background to see what's in there. But that's part of that connection, isn't it? I'm finding that more people are putting things behind them that they want you to notice because they want that connection.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I was watching the news the other day, and I happened to, watch somebody who's zooming from their house and talking. But one of the person's backgrounds was really a couple pictures that had their kids or their parents and that kind of stuff. And I thought that is a way of actually seeing a person as a person and kind of connecting with them on what's most important.
So how do we make this happen? I mean, you've been doing some work very directly with bringing team building to a number of different clients. What are some of the best practices you've learned to make virtual teamwork and virtual team building come alive?
Sure. So the first thing I'm going to say is turn on that camera. I think a lot of people are always hesitant about that, but there really is something to be said that the power of communication, to be able to communicate effectively, starts a lot with the nonverbals. I know a lot of people talk about anywhere between 75 and 90% of all communication is everything nonverbal. So it's not the words, right? Being able to see people, see facial expressions, understand tone and all that. So number one is definitely turn the camera on. Part two is I do think look at the actual structures you have in place, right? So let's take meetings, for instance. A part of every meeting output has this aspect of there's something related to team development, right? So if you start your meeting really with a, hey, let's go around and check in with each other, see how the week's going. I even read online, somebody starts their meeting with a rose and a thorn, which is what's the one thing that's gone well and the one thing that, that you've struggled with this week. So any of that check-in, I think is important. If you have that a part of your structure, great. If not, I would encourage you include it. Other things that people already have probably built in, things like recognition or even celebrations like somebody's birthday. I know we've done a good / terrible job of singing happy birthday to our coworkers. And I say terrible just because of the some of the singing voices and the Zoom experience has a delay. So it's interesting, but really still being able to recognize and celebrate.
I don't know if I should take offense to that or not, but
Well, I've been a part of that that piece as well. You actually are the one that's in a band. I'm not.
yeah, but you've heard my band.
That's for a different podcast.
Yeah.
So, but if you're doing anything around, think about personality assessments or book clubs, things that you're naturally doing. All of that is very possible virtual. So I just encourage you first, look at your existing structures you're using and continue those on.
Well, it's just, I mean, there's one thing I'd throw in. We have just done Michigan State's Executive MBA orientation, which is a 2-day program. And I spoke to Corey about it a couple of weeks ago, a couple of episodes ago. And one of the things we found was when we were asked to pivot, just about everything was doable virtually. We just had to think a little bit more creatively about how that worked. And even at one point where we would normally get them to wander around campus and take their pictures in front of various places, when challenged with that, I said, I'm going to get them to do the same thing. And even though they're remote, let's get them do the same thing and work out where those pictures are and insert their own pictures into pictures of them on campus. So at least they've had some virtual exploration of the campus. And some of the creative results were amazing in the time that we gave them.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's exactly it, right? Is how do you, and I think the word you said there is creatively tweak something so that it still works. It's still, really an awesome experience for people. So that's awesome. So if you take the idea of what you're already doing, and then it's like, okay, so then build on that idea. So are there new structures that you can actually do? I know, so I just go back to at the beginning of the pandemic in March, I know one large company in Michigan, I have a friend that works there. She said that specifically, they actually requested that each supervisor reach out to them just daily and check in with them. And they almost had this red, yellow, green, how are you doing kind of thing. But I think that's a small example of demonstrating some care and some connection to people. It's a new structure, and at the same time, it's something that's doable and workable, right? At Humanergy, we've talked around doing a couple different things. So we've created the idea of a monthly virtual lunch, last Friday of every month, if people are available. So it's not a required thing, but if people are available, hey, just show up on the Zoom call and let's have lunch and just chit chat, similar to if we were gonna, grab lunch in downtown Marshall and just be able to catch up. I hear people talk about creating them in water cooler Zooms, which is the same sort of idea, right? Is once a day, hey, at 9 o'clock, we're just going to check in, kick off the day, then go about our work. But that sort of connection, I think, is a really great, creative way. Let's create some new structures that, again, help people actually see each other, help people to feel connected.
Now, there's a sweet spot to that as well, because I was talking to a client this week that was saying, hey, when the pandemic hit, we said, let's all touch base and with this level of intensity. And now they're at that point where they log in and they say, what have we got to say that we didn't say yesterday, kind of thing. So they're readjusting the frequency of their touch bases because I absolutely agree that up front it was necessary more frequently to work out what was going on and what was happening. But then we find a natural place where it settles that says, okay, this is frequent enough that we've got something to talk about, but not so frequent that I'm not getting any work done.
Sure. Yep. Well, I know an author that wrote a book called What Great Teams Do Great. And a part of their improvement cycle is how will we communicate? And so I think you're right. During the pandemic at the beginning, most people probably changed what they were doing from a communication structure. And as things evolve, you again relook at that and say, do we need to now communicate at that level of frequency, or what is the right level so that we actually can be still a great team?
Yeah. So if we're looking at things like turning the camera on, what's the frequency, how we're going to communicate, how we're going to touch base. If I transition a little bit to how do we actually do team building? So what's one or two actual team building activities we could do via Zoom that you've found have moved from the physical world to the virtual world?
Sure. So let me start with a principle, which is I do think often fun is the shortest distance between two people, right? So if we're going to actually build connections, let's create something that is interesting, that is engaging, and lets people have a little bit of fun. Um, so the first one that makes my mind is pictures are worth thousands of words. And so any kind of picture, like if people are talking about either their week or that kind of stuff, you can easily call up on your phone, show a digital picture. I recently worked with a group that was relatively new to each other, and a part of coming in was they were to bring 3 pictures to help introduce themselves. And I was thinking, like, in a group of 10 people, this is probably going to take, I don't know, 10 minutes, about a minute per person. It was actually taking a half hour, and it really got into a level of conversation in depth that I had no idea would occur. So I do think the opportunity to share photos is a way to help build some connections. There are some go-to team building like icebreaker type things. So if you've ever played the game like Two Truths and a Lie, so if I share 3 things about myself and 2 of those statements are true, 1 is not, I've seen a lot of groups just even do that to kick off like conferences or meetings. And, it just helps people to get to know some unique things and some different things about one another. I've even seen it where people submit those, say, to the facilitator or the leader ahead of time, and then people actually guess who came up with those statements. So again, I think anytime you have the opportunity to share something more about yourselves, the better that is. We do a exercise, as you know, called quick connections. Back in the day, we always joked it was sort of speed dating, where people would, interview some people one-on-one. But the idea is come up with some different questions. So rather than like, hey, how are you doing? Or how was your week? Are there some unique and different questions you could ask people to get to know each other really at a different level? So, think of something like, what is your favorite vacation spot? Or, hey, if you could have lunch with a historical figure, who would it be and why? Um, I recently shared a list of questions with a group I was doing some team building with. And the big home run question for them was, how long would you last surviving in a zombie apocalypse? So anything like that, I think, is a great way of getting to know some people.
I find that the adding of and why to a lot of them is the way you get to the depth. One of my favorites I heard recently was power of flight or invisibility, which one and why. And you get into some of those that just explore folks a little bit deeper.
And which one would you choose?
Well, flight, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. All right, so I think anything like that, that's a easily conversion to an online forum. I'll mention a couple more that come to my mind. A lot of times when I have groups get together, I try and help link like what, besides what makes them diverse and different, what do they have in common? So there's a pretty easy exercise, which is let's take 5 minutes and try and find 5 things that we have in common. But the challenge is, let's find 5 most unique things. So it's not like, hey, do we all breathe air or, eat every day? That's not what we're talking about. But it's like, have we all been to Europe, or have we all been to Satterthwaite, the village in England, or something like that, right? To try and identify that.
So
And then
both of our family names are named after small villages in the north of England.
see, we have that in common.
Yay.
So I do think there's that, just that idea of linking to each other, again, getting to know each other. I know one of the fun ones we've been doing recently with groups has been a scavenger hunt. So, create a list of 10 to 20 items. You can actually divide them up into teams. And, on Zoom, we do the breakout room feature, put them into some teams, get a little bit of competition going, but come up with a list. So something easy, like maybe it's like find a shoebox. So you have all these items laying around your house. Let the team collaborate, let the team do some work together, and I think you can have some fun with it. So, some items like whether it's a crazy hat or your best sarcastic mug or magnet that you have sitting around. Again, I think all of that, it just generates some fun. It just generates the ability to see each other, connect with each other at a different level. So, the last piece I'd leave you with is Plato has a quote, or at least it's reference to him, which is, you can learn more about a person in an hour of play than a year of conversation. And so again, I think fun is a basic human need. So any kind of fun you can interject with the group, even if it's as simple as, hey, we're going to take 5 minutes and do your worst joke contest at a PG-13 level, anything like that, create some laughs, it builds some bonding.
I think there's a series of great ideas there, and there's lots of combinations of all of them. So you're setting out some kind of routes that say, like if you take the scavenger hunt and 2 truths and a lie, and I know one of them I've heard people have said is you've got 30 seconds from now to go and find something that's old, something that's precious, and something that's from far away, and bring them back to your screen. And then we'll look, and there's this combination of tell the stories about what they are, and or have people try and work out which one's old, which one's from far away, and which one's precious. And so I think what you've laid out there is a set of basic underlying rules, and then people can get creative around how they make the exercise on top of that, using some of the parameters you've identified.
Yeah, I think that's great. In fact, I'm going to steal that one with pride. So thank you.
So, well, that's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's,
Yeah.
you know, I've seen people sharing the whiteboard function on Zoom here and doing some kind of charades. That
would be charades for those speaking other than proper English.
Thank you for that, Mr. Satterthwaite. So you can play that, and drawing with your mouse is not the easiest thing in the world, but it creates some fun as well. So using the system can help as well.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think, you know, I know I've done, because I was asked to put together some team building programs for some groups that I every year work with. And I know initially I was like, holy cow, how is this going to work? And, you know, there's a lot of, you know, if you just type in virtual and remote team building, there's a lot of really good ideas out on the internet. And I think that same idea, which is some people are using systems, they have designed systems around virtual team building, if that's a route that you would ever want to go.
Yeah, and I go back to some of the old resources like the Carl Ronke Project Adventure stuff that had lots of games in. So many of those are transferable if you just have a little bit of thought to them.
Mm-hmm.
And think about how would we play this online? How would we connect virtually in the same way?
Absolutely.
So thanks, Lance. I appreciate you joining us today. And any other resources you'd point people to?
You know, I think one, use your internal resource. So I do think just ask your team, you know, if they are in agreement that, hey, things have shifted in this virtual world, maybe we're not feeling as connected. Why not just brainstorm some ideas with the team and see what they come up with? I do think that helps even just from a buy-in perspective. So I'd encourage you, discuss it with your team, see what you all can come up with. Two, obviously a resource is us. You know, happy to talk with you more about it, and or happy to help even lead an experience. So I know sometimes people are like, I don't know if I really want to lead that, but why not reach out to people who have been doing this work for a long time and really have had some success doing it. You know, so those are the things that at least right now make my radar around some next steps and some resources that you could use.
Lance Satterthwaite, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm going to leave you with one last piece. We know about what they say about cats and dogs is, you know, they fight like cats and dogs. And so I'm just going to share, I talked about a picture. This is my cat and dog getting along well. So if we can do it with cats and dogs, we can definitely do it with human beings.
So thanks for sharing your cat and dog getting on well on a mug with us. And absolutely, I think the challenge of building connections is we've just been given another obstacle. We're going to make it successful. We can make it successful. It's just a matter of approaching it from a slightly different angle. So Lance, thanks for your wisdom. Thanks for offering your support of anybody that is looking to do some team building online. And you can be reached at humanergy.com. Thanks for listening. Lance Satterthwaite, thanks very much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Humanergy Leadership Podcast. I'm David Wheatley. And we're brought to you by the book, What Great Teams Do Great, available now at all good bookstores. Thanks to Brian Spencer and Finkel for the music. Please share any feedback and suggestions. I'm available through humanergy.com. And go to iTunes, like, subscribe, and leave us a review so that other people can find us. In the meantime, till next time we meet, stay healthy.